Most Ukrainians of all political stripes would find it hard to criticize Harper and hard not to give him accolades for what he's done. He's basically come back and he's put the Ukrainian file in the news and in people's minds, not only in Canada but beyond Canada as well. He's kept it on the international table. So for that, I think he's done a good job.
I would just like to urge people for whom this is a ballot issue to consider one other aspect. And I touched on it before, but do really think about how effective Canada is in the multilateral environment today. And I agreed with a lot of what you said about the Prime Minister's position on Ukraine. And, you know, I have taken great care to really be not too partisan and not to criticize the government where I think they're doing a good job on Ukraine. The one thing I disagree with that you said is that the Canadian government has been effective in raising Ukraine as an issue in the international arena. I really challenge that. I do not see Canada being a go-to country when it comes to G7 policy or NATO policy on Ukraine. And I think that I have some insight into this because through my past life, I'm sort of independent of being MP, considered to be an expert on Ukraine. And so I have, separate from being an MP, you know, people from the State Department, people from the Chancellor's office in Germany, people from the Foreign Office in the UK getting in touch with me, basically saying, you know, explain to us these Ukrainians. We don't really understand them. We don't know them. What are they all doing? And that that says something. If what a liberal government would do, and we have a track record as a party, and we have expertise in our current team, is we would, you know, the way I think Canada needs to treat Ukraine is we need to be the G7, the NATO experts on Ukraine. We need to know more about Ukraine than anybody else. We need to be the country when Angela Merkel is trying to figure out, you know, oh my God, who do I talk to in Dnipropetrovsk to figure out what's going on? The first instinct in the Chancellor's office has to be, let's call Ottawa. Those guys know everybody in Ukraine. And that would put Canada in a very powerful position to advocate for Ukraine. But, you know, when I'm speaking to a broader non-Ukrainian audience, what I say, and I really believe this, is that's a way that we make our Ukraine connection work for Canada in the international community. You know, if we're the go-to country for Berlin, for Washington, for Paris, for London, for Brussels on Ukraine, then when we need to call those guys up and say, you know what, we need some help in the TPP negotiations, they're gonna, you know, they're gonna take our calls more readily. And I referred to Bildt before, but that's because he was such a great foreign minister, and he explained to me long before the Maidan that he had for Sweden, he thought, okay, Sweden, small country, how do we have an influence in the world? And he identified the crescent of countries going from Estonia all the way down to Turkey as sort of crucial countries for Europe and the world. And he said, he thought to himself, nobody in the EU is really focusing on these countries. So he sent his best ambassadors, you know, long before people were talking about Ukraine, his best ambassadors he sent to Kyiv and to Minsk, and to Chisinau, to Moldova, because he identified that this was a rift area. And sure enough, when things exploded in Ukraine, Bildt's voice was listened to. And so, you know, I agree with you, and I think it's important to give Harper his due on, you know, some strong words, strong rhetorical leadership on Ukraine. I don't take that away from him, and I think he believes it. But what I would say is the professional execution is missing, and that makes Canada a less effective supporter of Ukraine, and frankly, it makes Canada a less effective supporter of Canadian interests in the international arena. We would do better.
If I can say, Nick,